Welcome to this new series of Driver's Eye View videos, where we will look at the old railways and revisiting existing lines around the 1950s. In this program, we shall be travelling along the Riviera line in South Devon, calling at Exeter St Thomas, Exminster, Starcross, Dawlish Warren, Dawlish, Teignmouth, Newton Abbot, Kingswear, Torquay, Paignton, Goodrington Sands, Churston, and finally Kingswear. A total journey time of around 75 minutes. Our journey begins at Exeter St David's. It was opened on the 1st of May 1844 by the Bristol and Exeter Railway and is one of 3 stations serving the city. The station, along with the route to Bristol, was designed by Sir Isambard Kingdom Brunel, who was one of the 19th century's most iconic and key engineers who designed and built the Great Western Railway. On the 30th of May 1846, the South Devon Railway, along with the Exeter's second station, St Thomas, reached St David's, linking Exeter with Plymouth and Penzance, which was also built by Brunel, using his signature 7-foot 1/4 inch broad gauge track, as well as the line to Bristol, which was also built using broad gauge. In 1851, the line between Exeter and Crediton was opened, and on the 1st of August 1854, the North Devon Railway from Barnstaple connected with the line. The third and final station, Exeter Central, opened as Exeter Queen Street in 1860 by the London and South Western Railway using the 4-foot 8.5 inch standard gauge track. This complication of mixed gauge called for remodelling of the track layout and the rebuilding of St David's. Both stations were connected on the 1st of February 1862, and by 1864 St David's was rebuilt for the London and South Western Railway. The main express locomotives on the GWR between the 1920s and 1950s were a mixture of Castle-class and King's-class steam locomotives, as well as the iconic pannier tanks used for local services and were exclusively used by the GWR. The 1950s saw the start of the 1955 modernisation plan, which introduced diesel locomotives and diesel multiple units to replace steam trains, as well as the start of electrification works on most main lines out of London. This ultimately brought an end to the age of steam. Our train is at platform 3 and consists of a 4-car Class 101 diesel multiple unit. Built by Metro Camel as either 2, 3 or 4-car sets between 1956 and 1959 at Washwood Heath, Birmingham. In total, 760 units were built, with 465 units for the eastern and northeastern regions, 159 for Scotland, and 139 for the London Midland region. Both drivers' carriages, or with some units just the one carriage, were powered by a Leyland engine, which generated between 125 or 230 brake horsepower per engine. They have a top speed of 70 miles per hour. These units were incredibly successful and were in service for 47 years. When the 1980s arrived, they were slowly but surely being replaced by two new types of DMUs, the Pacers and the Sprinters. After privatisation in 1997, the Class 101s were only managed by First North Western and worked on the Hope Valley line before being gradually retired from service in the new millennium. In 2003, a final farewell tour ran in the northwest of England, with the very last service being on Christmas Eve, between Rosehill Marple and Manchester Piccadilly. Today, just 41 units are now preserved on heritage lines, museums, or in private hands across the country. Leaving St David's, the line to the left climbs to Exeter Central at 1 in 37, which meant both passenger and freight trains using the incline had to have banking engines at the rear without question. This banking practice is also familiar at Bromsgrove's Lickey Incline. We crossed the River Exe and its flood relief channel. At least with the Class 101s we have a more open view, unlike the Class 156. Opened by the South Devon Railway in 1846 and is built on a viaduct crossing the St Thomas suburban area. Originally there was just one platform until 1861, when the line was doubled along with a new platform and the station shed. Dr. Beating's report proposed the closure of the station, however it survived and the station's building became Grade 2 listed. However, it didn't save the station shed and was demolished in the 1960s. At City Basin Junction, the Tane Valley line diverges to the right as we pass the city's vast goods yards and facilities. The Valley line opened in 1882 between Heathfield and Cristo before being extended to Exeter in 1902. Passenger services ended in 1958, and by 1961 the line between Cristo and Exeter was closed due to various floods. Freight services continued between Heathfield and Cristo until complete closure in 1967. The line follows the River Exe all the way to Exminster, where it opens out into the Exe estuary, along with the River Clyst from Topsham. When the South Devon Railway opened the line from Teignmouth in 1846, Sir Isambard Kingdom Brunel tested a new type of propulsion that the broad gauge track was designed for: atmospheric propulsion. There were a number of problems with this new propulsion, from technical miscalculations, the propulsion being underpowered, to the leather flaps that would seal the air from escaping the pipes, which failed on occasion. Its operation was brief, only lasting between 1847 to 1848 before being abandoned. This propulsion works by having a special continuous pipe running between the rails that would carry the required air pressure, which is conveyed to move a train. For this to work, the train would need to carry a piston which ran in the tube with a resealable slot to keep the train and the pipe attached. There were a number of disused power stations that once fed these tubes. We shall be passing one at Starcross Station. Opening 6 years after the line's opening in 1852, and was the starting point for a proposed branch line to Exmouth. However, this never happened, as the London and South Western Railway built the Evercote line from Exeter instead. Having two platforms from 1859 until 1906, where two relief lines were built to pass each side of the station. This turned the station layout from two through platforms into two island platforms, which allowed local passenger services and goods traffic to use the station and the goods yard, whilst through traffic continued uninterrupted. The station's goods yard rapidly grew in the 1920s, which allowed goods traffic to pass the station even when both relief platforms were occupied. However, the station would inevitably close to passengers in 1964, and then to freight traffic in 1967. The only surviving evidence are the station building, which is now in private hands, and the signal box, which is preserved on the Gloucestershire and Warwickshire Railway in Broadway, Worcestershire. Notice these train protection boards. The black board with the white cross is an AWS cancelling indicator, which tells the driver that the already received AWS warning does not apply in this direction. The larger board warns the driver that we are approaching a trough, which consists of a long tray that is full of water, supplied by a pumping station which we will pass to our left. Water troughs are used to refill a steam engine's water tank whilst on the move. Mainly express or high-speed freight services use these troughs. At the bottom of the modified tender is a type of scoop that takes on the water from the tray and feeds it through a vertical pipe and into the tender. Similar troughs could be found on most main lines in the country. However, these were taken out of use and lifted when the diesel trains succeeded the steam locomotives. We now come alongside the estuary of the River Exe, as it flows into the English Channel. We will follow the estuary until we reach Dawlish Warren, where it opens out. Starcross opened with the line in 1846 and is home to one of the many engine houses that used to power the atmospheric propulsion trains. In time, the engine house has been used as a chapel, youth club, coal store, a museum of the atmospheric railway, and in the present day is the home of the Starcross Fishing and Cruising Club. As for the station itself, it once had a train shed like at St. Thomas's Station until 1906. Goods traffic would be withdrawn in 1965, and also to coal traffic in 1967. The station building would be demolished in 1981. The station also serves the nearby pier for ferry services to Exmouth, which is part of the South West Coast Path. On the approach to Dawlish Warren Station is the Dawlish Warren National Natures Reserve and Warren Golf Course to our left, and to our right is Dawlish Sands and Hazelwood Holiday Parks. Dawlish Warren is by far the youngest station on the line, with the original station opening in 1905 some 300 metres south. It was known as Warren Halt until it was renamed in 1911 to Dawlish Warren. The current station dates from 1912. The station is popular with holidaymakers and is incredibly busy during the summer, as it's next to Dawlish Warren Beach. As we leave the station, the River Exe opens out into the English Channel, whilst we will be travelling along the iconic Dawlish Sea Wall, which is one of the many highlights on the whole Riviera line. The South Devon Railway seawall opened in 1846, when Exeter and Plymouth was connected. There were two main sections, the Dawlish seawall and the Teignmouth seawall, and are separated by a series of tunnels. Because the line runs parallel with the open sea, this caused many problems, mostly landslips and the sea breaching the wall. A recent breach was on February the 4th, 2014, which saw the sea breach 40 metres of the wall and it collapsed. It took Network Rail 2 months to repair the damage. In 2019, Network Rail raised the seawall at Dawlish by 2.5 metres and built it out of concrete to increase the durability of this section of the sea wall. It was completed in the summer of this year. The first station at Dawlish opened with the line in 1846 before being rebuilt in 1875 at its current location. Due to increasing holiday traffic, the platforms were extended to cope with the increasing numbers. The signal box dates from 1920, after replacing the original. It controlled the Dawlish sea-wall section as well as the station's goods yard. Goods traffic would cease in 1965, and the signal box will be taken out of use in 1986, before being demolished in 2013. On the 22nd of September 1921, a Star-class train on the Plymouth to Crewe service collided with a goods train at Dawlish Station, after failing to stop at danger. There were no fatalities, and only 2 people were injured. Leaving the Dawlish seawall section, we enter the 5 tunnels that will take us onto the Teignmouth seawall section. Kennaway Tunnel, 205 yards long. Paignton Tunnel, 227 yards long. Fillet Tunnel, 49 yards long. Clerks Tunnel, 58 yards long. And finally, Parsons Tunnel, 521 yards long. Like the Dawlish section, the Teignmouth section has had its history of problems with the sea. In 1852, a landslide caused the line to be shut for 4 days. In 1855 and 1859, the sea breached the Teignmouth section. In 1929, a storm on Christmas Eve caused the downline to be subsidized. This section is planned to be reinforced and raised with concrete like with the Dawlish section. opening with the line in 1846. Apart from having two tunnels that sandwiched the station until 1884, when they were opened out, Teignmouth has had a similar history to Dawlish. It too was rebuilt, one platform extended, had a signal box and goods yard. Teignmouth lost its goods yard to normal goods traffic in 1965, but coal traffic continued until complete closure in 1967. The signal box was closed in 1986 after the Panor signal box at Exeter took control over the line. We passed Teignmouth Harbour, along with its goods sidings. The A379 road bridge crosses both the line and the River Tyne estuary, linking Teignmouth with Shaldon. We will be following the estuary all the way to Newton Abbot. the approach to Newton Abbot, we pass the vast goods yards and sidings of Hackney Yard to our left, and the racecourse to our right. It was first opened in 1911 as a staging point for goods traffic using the steep inclines at Dartmoor. The yard lost a good portion of its sidings in 1971, but to this day cement trains to Moorswater via the Loo branch still use the line as a staging area. We now cross the River Tyne, along with the Moulton Hampstead branch to our right. Opened by the South Devon Railway in 1846 from the Teignmouth extension, and in 1847 the line reached Totnes, with the line to Torquay opening the following year. 1866 saw the opening of the line to Moulton Hampstead. The station was rebuilt in 1927 after the First World War delayed the previous rebuilding plans. During the Second World War, the southbound platform was hit by 6 bombs, with 5 going off, whilst 1 failed to explode. This raid caused a total of 14 fatalities. After the war, the line to Moulton Hampstead closed to passengers in 1959. During the 60s, the locomotive workshop was converted to accommodate the new diesel locomotives, until the whole workshop gradually disappeared between 1970 and 1981. Here at Aller Junction, the line diverging to the right is the main line to Plymouth and Cornwall. We, on the other hand, take the route to Paignton. This section of the line was opened in 1848 by the South Devon Railway to Tor Station, and was later extended to Paignton in 1859 by the Dartmouth and Tor Bay Railway. The line would continue on to the terminus at Kingswear, which opened in 1864. Just before this bridge, we begin to climb at an average gradient of 1 in 150 all the way to Tor's summit. Kingswear opened in 1853 after the local villagers petitioned to the South Devon Railway to stop trains at their village, and were even prepared to pay for the construction of the station themselves. After the doubling of the line to Torquay in 1882, the platforms were extended, and the station received its own signal box. Kingswear would inevitably close along with the signal box in 1964. We slow for the 35 miles per hour speed restriction for the tight curve at Tor's summit, before falling at an average gradient of 1 in 74 all the way to Torquay. goods yards mark our entry into Tor Station. Opened in 1848 as Tor Quay, and was the original terminus from Newton Abbot until 1859, when the line to Paignton was opened. It was renamed to Tor after the current Torquay station was opened on the Paignton extension. Goods traffic was handled from 1849 until 1967, and the station building is now Grade 2 listed as of 1975. Just under a mile from Tor Station, we arrive into Torquay Station. Opened in 1859 by the Dartmouth and Tor Bay Railway as a single branch line until 1878, when the station was rebuilt with the addition of a passing loop. The line towards Paignton was doubled in 1910. Due to the steep inclines on both sides of the station, goods sidings were added for banking engines to assist trains using the inclines. There were 2 signal boxes, one at each end of the station, until 1966, where the north box was demolished along with the through line and sidings. The south signal box would only be open for the busy summer months, until 1984, when it would be closed and be rented out for commercial use. As we leave the station, we approach a deep cutting which was once the site of the 133-yard long Livermead Tunnel. It was opened out when the line was doubled. We pass Hollicombe Goods Yard, which serves the Torquay Gasworks. Opening in 1910 and saw heavy traffic to and from Kingswear. 90 wagons would head down to the harbour and collect these containers. Once loaded, they would be split up into smaller freight workings and brought back to Hollicombe due to the steep gradients at either side of Churston. The yard would close in 1966. We pass the site of Preston Station. It opened on July 24, 1911, exactly 1 year since the line doubled. It only had a single platform that was served by the steam rail motors that were introduced to compete with the trams running between Torquay and Paignton. However, it never prospered and was closed in 1914. As we approach Paignton, the gradient falls to 1 in 81. The station at Paignton was opened in 1859 by the Dartmouth and Torbay Railway. In 1861, the line was extended to Churston once the doubling of the line from Torquay was completed. Further expansion at Paignton took place in 1924 when the station received new canopies, a new larger booking office, and the extension of the platforms. Paignton would become the northern terminus for the Dart Valley Railway when it was sold to the company by British Rail in 1972. a few months after the line's complete closure between Paignton and Kingswear. To our left will be the site of the independent platform for the Dart Valley Railway. We pass Paignton and Goodrington's goods depot and carriage sidings to our right. On the approach to Goodrington, we start to climb at an average gradient of 1 in 70. Just over half a mile from Paignton and we arrive into Goodrington Sands. It is the youngest on the Kingswear branch, opening in 1928. In 1956, the bridge at the north end was constructed to carry Tanner's Road over the line as it was originally a level crossing. The extensive carriage sidings opposite the station was completed in 1957. As we climb to the summit at Churston, we pass Goodrington Beach to our left, and the carriage sidings to our right. Now of course, banking engines were on station ready to assist heavy passenger or freight services using the steep gradients at either side of Churston. Most of the money was spent on this part of the line. The views of Tull Bay have always been outstanding. Even today, the borough of Torbay is still very popular with tourists and holidaymakers, as there are countless holiday resorts and parks situated by the coast overlooking the sea. On the horizon we can see our line crossing the Hook Hills Viaduct and get a good view of the steep incline. The gradient steepens to 1 in 60 as we cross Broadsands Viaduct. Between that and Hook Hills Viaduct was Broadsands Halt, and was built around the same time as Goodrington Station. The halt was used for excursion traffic, and was only in use for 1 year before closing. As we approach Churston, the line from Brixham converges from the left. Opened in 1861 as Brixham Road until 1868, when the branch to Brixham was opened, and so it was renamed to Churston. The station received its second platform in 1865. The platforms were extended twice, first in 1893 along with a signal box, and then in 1913 with another signal box that replaced the original. The line to Brixham would close in 1963, and in 1965 general freight traffic was withdrawn. Sunday services ceased calling at Churston in 1967. The following year saw the signal box close as the passing loop was taken out of use. The station would regain its passing loop in 1979, and saw the signal box reopen until 1991, when it was closed for the last time. Signalling of the line from 1990 is controlled from Britannia Crossing at Kingswear. Churston in the present day is now the main engineering centre for the Dart Valley Railway, along with a locomotive workshop. The line descends briefly at 1 in 79 before levelling out, and then falls all the way to Britannia Crossing at an average gradient between 1 in 66 and 1 in 100. Greenway Tunnel, 495 yards long. In 2012, Greenway Holt was opened to attract visitors to the Greenway estate, home of the crime writer Agatha Christie. We come alongside the River Dart as we approach Britannia Crossing, along with Britannia Holt. Unlike the Holts of Preston Sands and Broad Sands, Britannia Holt has been in service for over 100 years. It opened as Kingswear Crossing Holt in 1877, but was later known as Britannia Holt, after the Prince of Wales, Albert Edward, took his two sons to join the HMS Britannia. It was only used for passengers or tourists visiting the ship. In 1988, it was closed due to it being considered unsafe. The hire ferry at the crossing has been in service since 1830. As we approached the terminus, we crossed Waterhead Creek. We also passed a turntable and the carriage sidings to our left, whilst on the right is the freight terminal. Opening in 1864 by the Dartmouth and Torbay Railway. Originally the terminus would be situated across the river at Dartmouth, but only went as far as Kingswear. In 1866, ferry services started taking passengers to and from Dartmouth. Although it never had platforms and any trains, Dartmouth did have its own station building that sold train tickets and processed parcels. Also that year, goods traffic started running to and from Kingswear. Most freight traffic would ship goods out to sea, but also carrying coal and containers inland to the gasworks at Holcombe. The 60s saw the decline for both freight and passenger services using the station. 1964 saw the docks close, only for freight traffic to be withdrawn the following year. From 1966, passengers saw only a shuttle service to and from Paignton, with the exception of peak season trains. Regular Sunday services ceased in 1967 and only ran in the summer the following year before being withdrawn. 1968 saw the bay platform close, as well as the signal box. It was at this point that this section of the line from Paignton was proposed for complete closure. After being completely closed for several months by the Beeching Report, the branch line was saved when the line was sold to the Dart Valley Railway in 1972. The bay platform was restored in 1976, and in 1990 a new signal box was opened at Britannia Crossing to control the entire Heritage Line. We can appreciate some steam action as a bonus. Here, Broughton Castle, number 5033, accompanied by 2 pannier tanks at the rear to help with the climb to Churston. This castle class will take the express train as far as Bristol Temple Meads, before being taken over by a King's class that will take the train all the way to London. The 1950s would be the final decade for the operation of steam locomotives. Between the 60s and 70s, all will be replaced by the diesel and electric locomotives, as well as the multiple units. However, on this heritage line, steam is still in its prime on the Dart Valley Railway.